for the time being, I'd like to move on to ask if you have questions. What questions would you have for the panel here?
Can I ask about the specific issue of the number of directorships which people may hold? It seems to me that when you've got, as I think you still do have, a significant number of people with multiple directorships, applies particularly to major listed companies. People who've got multiple, that's an indicator that the pool from which they're drawn is not all that large. In fact, most major listed companies will only include directors and people who have worked in similar companies previously. But it also means that actually those people are desperately short of time. If you've got 6 ned roles already, you don't really have time to get to know, for want of a better term, new people coming on. So it prevents diversity. Diversity of views does require board time, bringing people into the board, making them a useful contributor. And where the board is stuffed full of people who just racing on to the next board, you'll never get proper diversity of views reflected in board discussions. Or discussions outside the board.
Sure, the board that the person is on. So some boards obviously very demanding of the director's time, some not demanding at all. So there is an absolute number. But I do think, again, I go back to the discussions that I have with people who aspire to be on a board or who are already on boards and want to maybe pick up 1 or 2 more. The first question I ask them is, well, okay, let's discuss your current commitments. How many days a week are you already committed to your existing activity, or how many days a week do you want to be? So it becomes a fairly simple question, and it's interesting the answers that you get back. Usually, most new directors vastly underestimate how much time they'll have to spend on board issues before they join the company, and end up tying themselves in knots, not having enough time to do the job properly. So I think it's a question that's right to ask. It's difficult to give a specific answer because everybody's a little bit different.
And it's easy to see why you can't be prescriptive in that sort of area in terms of how many. You know, when you see too many, it's what's reasonable. I think it becomes much more of a nuanced.
We've always got the awkward question of whether we put a number in or not, effectively. And if you put numbers in the code, it can encourage a certain amount of herding behaviour, if I speak bluntly about it. So if we were to put it in 5, for example, well, it really depends on what those 5 appointments are. And it does involve some sort of thoughtful consideration by the individual concerned and the board as to whether there's the time commitment the time commitment that the person is able to get on the board is the right one.
Yeah, and I think the role has a lot to do with it too, because again, I remember being given when I was first asked to chair something, and my colleague saying, "You can't chair." I said, "I beg your pardon, why can't I chair?" And he very rightly taught me, "You can't chair because if something happens to the chief executive, you have to step in, and you have a day job." Yeah, okay, great. So I think you get the nuances.
So that's about time. Again.
It is or it's about also a respect for not planning for when everything goes well, but for planning when a crisis hits. How much tolerance are we putting in? And I think that becomes difficult. You had a question?
Yes, thank you very much for a very good panel and very interesting matter. My question goes around the current stance and how dependent are board of directors of publicly listed companies in external advisors such as brokers, investment banks, or potential legal counsels are external to the company on their succession plans. And the derivative to the question is how is the regulator thinking about that matter, if at all?
And you think there's a particular, you're alluding to particular challenges in that?
Yes, I believe so. As a 15 years investment banker, I've seen quite a lot of reliance from boards of publicly listed companies into their advisors and their brokers into nominating the next boards.
Yes.
And also, I really want to understand now, as a member of a transition in my career into a corporate role, the management team. I want to see how, I want to understand how dependent boards are and how dependents are going to be subject to the regulator scale.
And so, are you interested in seeing how just beyond the people on the board, but who's actually
Yes.
advising? And I was interested, it's a very
Yes.
interesting question.
Yes.
I noticed today in the FT that
Yes.
and I am a chartered accountant and I am trained by one of the big four, so I'm guilty as charged. But I was interested to see that KPMG have been involved in career since 1999.
Exactly right.
Yes.
That's why I'm
And again, in terms of these,
Yeah.
we're looking at independence
And I
so
think that
it's a
really
great
goes
challenge.
to the
Yeah.
point of independency
Yeah,
or
succession planning, how far?
coverty as well, right? So I think it's important.
I mean, I think it's an excellent question, and I was really thinking there about the variety of advice that a company receives, or the board receives, or individual members of the board receive. Particularly becomes an issue when thinking about remuneration.
Right.
Now, the way that, or part of the way that it's attempted to deal with when it comes to remuneration is through transparency. And remuneration, I'm going to start a conversation about remuneration now at this stage of the evening.
That's a whole other topic.
But one of the remuneration has been such a sensitive topic over a number of years that all the governance around remuneration is now in the law, there's now regulations, all the accountability and the transparency is in the law. Now you can have a bit of debate about whether that's worked or not, but there it's dealt with through transparency. And so I think if we've got questions about the various advice that the board is receiving and individuals are receiving, and we want to tackle that, I think you have to start with dealing with who it is. And not really, it's going to be difficult when you say, well, what advice are they giving? But I think you're right in terms of how long have they been giving advice and who
I
they
think
are.
this is a part of what the code is missing, really. Particularly in facilities, the companies, I'm talking about big FTSEs. How much advice boards, executive and non-executive, really get from independent advisors and how, biased at the end of the day they are when they make their decisions on future
Well, I think
succession plans.
there's two questions. That is how biased they are and how much
Yeah.
advice do they get. So
Exactly.
there's two things. My experience is working for executive search firms, which advise boards on succession issues and appointment issues and who should be the next person to join. Some of the larger executive search firms have an unhealthy, really close relationship with the individuals on those boards and have had for a long, long time. You do wonder about, to a certain extent, about objectivity. I don't want to slander my colleagues, but there is a worry there. But also fishing from a very small pool. It's the same people over and over again. So the advice that they're tending to give is what they think the board wants to hear, which is, we want somebody who looks just like us. So that's, I think it is a worry. I'm not sure what the regulator can do about that, but that's a concern.
Yeah, I think transparency, just awareness, just the day will come when it will be unusual for people to have been in positions of power for 20 years, irrespective of where the power is. Any other? Yes, at the back.
Hi, Jane Williams, People Innovation. I've just been thinking over a period of time about this length of tenure. We're just talking there about the advisors who've been advisors since 1999. We've seen trends that the younger people are staying less time in one company, but we still stick with this 9 years for companies. And I do challenge whether 9 years is too long, and that there's an opportunity there, because there's so much change in a period of time now, especially in the bigger companies. To have the same people looking at the situations all the time does carry risk. So my own sense is that 9 years is probably one tenure too long, 5, 6. You can't go too short, because otherwise in the big companies people don't really get into it. But I do think that 9-year tenure, and I do think people get frustrated with the problems of an organisation as well, so they become too inculcated into it and lose objectivity as a board. So I do think there are a number of risks about 9 years.
And is there also an issue, a difference between everyone staying for 9 years and actually one or two being there for a while? I think you've got there are two issues. I think you've got the balance of fresh ideas and so forth.
Particularly if the chair and the SID both do 9 years,
Of course, 9 years is a limit, not necessarily an average.
No, but I still think it's quite a high limit. I was on the board of a charity, quite a big charity, and the chair had been there for 9 years, and you could tell that some of the changes he wanted to make hadn't happened, and this can happen in other situations that I'd seen, and therefore they get frustrated with it as well. So I think you can reduce the effectiveness of people in roles with that 9 years.
Yeah, so can we take on a couple of questions and just see what the sort of viewpoints, the sort of areas of interest that people have, because we're aware that the 10-year one is a big area of interest. Yes,
I'm very mine's on 10-year bell, but I mean, it's quite interesting. I come from a private equity venture capital background, so when we sit on boards, we tend to sit for between 3 and 5 years, and you actually find that, year 2, 3, 4, you do provide substantial value. But actually, most of the companies that I've been involved with, and some have been enormously successful, actually, within 20 years, they often go bust. Like I did the first funding for Lumina Leisure, it was enormous, and now it's bust, because times change. And actually, it is interesting. I would say in my 30 years of business, you actually see a cycle of over 5, a 5-year cycle is quite good. The other thing is, if there's a tenure of 9 years, and we all know we have basically an employees network in the UK, which is the way it is, and the longer they stay, they go native, as women I'm sure would in those circumstances as well, but it also makes it much more difficult to get new blood into boards. If, let's say, after 3 or 4 years, they actually had to move people on, so a certain number of, then in actual fact, you have to look outside the existing group. If people are staying for 5, 6, 7 years, they're actually becoming, and there's nothing wrong with being a career non-exec. I mean, there's some non-execs who are absolutely fantastic and should be there for 20 years in some ways. But actually, it's stopping this movement and this requirement to look outside, because you can see that somebody moves from one board to another board, and you may have KPMG or Pricewaterhouse doing the auditing for 20 years as well. I think the auditing question is a really interesting point as well.
Take some more. Yes, ma'am.
The comment I wanted to make is I recently attended a seminar to comply with my CPD requirement, and the topic was governance in 2018. And it was referring to the reports that companies have to provide about equal opportunity, diversity, pay gap and all that kind of stuff. I was then talking to the solicitor who gave the talk, and they were referring to the fact that they were in conversation with some of the people from other professional bodies to have more seminars for those people as well. So I was thinking there are professional people, members of professional body, who are doing this because of their bread and butter. They've got to have CPD to have those letters after the name. So aren't the best people to be taken on by this board individuals who are members of these particular professional bodies, because that is their bread and butter?
Okay, interesting question. So the one, I don't want to hear your thoughts, David and Chris, but I can think of many accountants and many lawyers I would not put in charge of strategy. So it just depends what we're. I think sometimes it depends what we're looking for from our non-executive. But the point that you make around using the guidance frameworks that we have and the CPD frameworks and so forth to actually challenge how we do things and challenge behaviour and see if people have the skill sets that you talked about earlier, David. I think they're very valuable. What do you think?
Okay, I mean, just on 9 years, there's so much you can say about this. just to go, the reason 9 years is there is when there were 3-year board appointments. So you would have 2 terms of 6, which was seen as normal, and then you would have a review after 6, and then if they were considered still considered to be independent, you carry on for another 3 equals 9. We considered shortening it. I'll be frank with you. Any number shorter than 9, we're going to have to justify. Why have you picked 7? I simplify to a certain extent, but it's not 9. Now, various arguments have been put to us in terms of how long it takes, in terms of complexity of the issues involved, to be performing well on a board, and we've been given different answers to that question. We have to also consider the issue of internal candidates for boards. So if you have been on a board as independent director for 3 years and you then become the chair, we say that the clock doesn't restart. So there's 6 years left. Is that long enough? Some of the message you're getting from this group is that, yes, it is long enough. It was interesting when we published the consultation, a week after we published the consultation, the FT produced statistics on some of the longevity of independent directors on boards, and that 25% of FTSE 100 boards would have to change at least 2 people, something along those lines. And again, half the audience thought that this was dreadful, and half thought, well, great, let's get some movement, let's get some refreshment. So I take the points about making it less than 9, and I understand that. The issue we face is, are we encouraging a more short-termist approach? Because as I said, some investors are very, very happy with longevity on boards, particularly if they see an effective board that's challenging well, and with a company that's delivering on its strategy and is successful in the long term. And the backstop for this is that the 9 years is just one of the criteria, and it is comply or explain. And if you wish to vary your approach, then it's a question of thoughtful consideration about why that person is on the board, and explaining it to your investors.
Oh, and before we turn to Chris, from my own experience, I served on the board of Building Society, one of the most independent directors I have come across in my profession. I've been on that board for 34 years. There's no question he brought independent judgment. There's no question that but you require a certain type of individual. It's not that, I think sometimes when we have a problem that we're trying to solve by codes and so forth,
Well,
when actually it's a different issue.
That was going to be my point. I don't think the code can solve that problem, but it is an issue. And there's a tension in any board between continuity. The board is, in a sense, the custodians of the company, whereas the executives come and go. So there is an argument that length of tenure is a good thing, but then the tension comes when they become blockers in HR terms. You would never, in a regular organisation, suggest that everybody who becomes a product manager must do it for 9 years. Everybody that becomes a marketing manager must do it for 9 years. You have this constipated organisation which nobody ever moved. So why are boards different? Well, because of the need for continuity, because of the need for greater knowledge, continuity of knowledge. So I can see both sides of the argument. So perhaps the issue of bringing in new blood can be addressed in a different way, not by addressing the terms of service, but by encouraging boards to look outside routinely and refresh themselves routinely from defined pools. Again, it's another code issue. This is a behaviour, good practice and good business issue. The kind of things we talk about all the time. Think about people who've not been on the board before. Think about people who just look and feel a bit different. Love the point about taking a risk, actually. And it is a risk sometimes, I'm sure. But you can minimise the risk by saying, they've got these things. They might not look like what you expect, but they've got enough to take that risk. So I think it's a great point, and one that the boards need to ask themselves constantly.
Yeah, sorry, another question.
Thank you. Ms. Warren. I wanted to ask about the transparency question a little further. I'm relatively new to this game, feeling my way around, and one of the things that strikes me is that it's hard to find where ned rolls are advertised. So I wondered what your views were about open advertisement and about aggregation somehow of advertisement of ned rolls.
We should ask Ned on board about this. Okay, so without traditionally board positions have been filled by tapping someone on the shoulder, would you like to serve on chat? I think we have, to a certain extent, moved away from that. So the way I look at it is there needs to be a measure of, there needs to be a third party involved somehow. And then you just argue about the mechanism of attracting candidates. The reason it's good to have a third party is that they are more likely to search more widely. You'll notice this is an incredibly self-serving statement. But they are more likely to search much more widely and perhaps try and recruit new people into a bigger pool than the tapping on the shoulder. The problem with advertising is it's a scattergun. It depends who replies to the ad. When you start advertising everything, you then start to have rules about how they're treated, how candidates are treated. It's like public service. So it's something you're advertising just for the sake of it because you're supposed to. I'd be worried about going down that route, but I would argue strongly for some kind of third party involvement. I'm sure that answers your question.
Sorry, Chris, just to complement this excellent question, that goes to my point around the dependability of boards in their brokers.
Yes.
So
Well, it absolutely does, yes. I mean, if the executive search firm is not giving objective advice, and often they are, sometimes they do, but often they aren't, then yeah, we still have a problem. And maybe open advertising is the answer, but that is a very high risk way of trying to recruit someone, because you're relying on someone seeing the ad on a particular day. And maybe they were in Corfu that week, and the best candidates didn't see it.
Thanks, Chris. So we're heading into the last 5 minutes or so of our discussion this evening, and I'm interested to ensure that we've covered the points that you would have. Is there anyone who's got a question or an experience for a topic that we have not already covered yet? No, that's okay. Anyone else with questions? Anyone we haven't heard from yet? Because we have some people looking to come in a second time. So just before we go to that, sorry, did I?
No, okay.
No, you're okay. Yes.
So, sorry to go back to the tenure point. I guess I'm interested in whether anyone has any practical examples of where chairs have perhaps caused damage to companies by not being independent, or is it more of a theoretical problem than as something that we're actually seeing in practice?
I've seen them. Should I address that? I'm not going to name names.
Listen,
I'm not going to name names.
I would not dare ask David to make comment on if you've seen badly behaved chairman. Yeah, Chris, obviously. Yes,
it starts from the beginning, when the chairman was first recruited. And if there was an unhealthy relationship, in the nicest possible way, between the chairman and the person, typically the investors, then it's not going to get any better. So it tends to be in smaller businesses, certainly startups, certainly where the investors are extremely influential, perhaps they're on the board and so on, and they brought in their person to be the chairman. That can get a bit sticky. What I've seen less of is chairs of bigger companies. They were already big when they were hired. That tends to be less of an issue, but I'm sure that's the exception. It's a small business.
without naming names.
Well,
is there anything that you want
there is an issue. I mean, we can't name any names. But the reason that these criteria are here is as a result of the Higgs report back in 2003-4, and Derek Higgs knew one or two things about the role of non-executives, so he would have seen he would have seen the problems that this kind of thing causes, and that's why the criteria, of which 9 years is only one, I say again, that's why all those criteria set out in the board, we haven't changed any of them, because they reflect the issues to do with conflicts of interest and relationships. That's why they're there.
Yeah, and I think from my own experience, taking the diversity point, taking the good chairman point, I think one of the best chairmen I ever worked with was from an academic background. It was a first chair role for him, and he was prepared to listen to a debate. So, if you and I were having a debate about the value of governance and really was it worth a candle, he would listen to both sides. He would take the mood of the rest of the people at the table, say who's inclined to Mary's way of thinking, who's inclined to David's way of thinking, and allow the debate to go into big. I think so. It feeds a lot into the culture, the skill set.
He's got a set of skills. If he's come from an academic background, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm sure he drives some people nuts as well. And some of the other aspects of that, but it's a great set of skills for sort of almost sort of dialectical materialism, listening to both sides and forming a synthesis.
Yeah. And so you get good examples out of the way. Did anyone else who hasn't spoken yet have anything you wanted to say? Type. Okay. I'm just about to come. I'm trying to catch your eye for your second contribution, but we'll be called type. So I certainly would like to thank the nedonboard team hugely for how well they've organised everything today. And so thank you all very much. Joining us in the contribution this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. It was very interesting. So what nedonboard do is we have this series of special interest group and meetings. So we engage the board member community on specific topic to share this discussion, and then we provide it freely as a member area, so it's helped to better inform those in the non-executive board group. So during the preparation of this best practice guide, there was also more people involved. So I would like also to thank them. In particular, Ellen Pitcher, OBE, who was sharing this best practice topic. Obviously Chris Seaborn, founder and senior partner of the succession planning company, David Stein, director of corporate governance at the FRC, Emily O'Shea, consultant at the Ziggo Partnership and Russell Reynolds, Julia Jameson, Ernst & Young, global succession planning and coaching leader, Mark Cadal, director at Sanctuary Governance, Mark Winkle, CEO and executive coach at Advanced Board Group Excellence, and obviously Mary Campbell, OBE. Thank you very much for sharing this evening as well. So if you would like to be involved as well, I noticed that you mentioned the remuneration, the best practice on remuneration, remuneration that's coming up with committee. So speak to us, member of staff, if you would like to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think you have some.
And to the bar.
Most important thing.